Hi again, everyone. I'm olliemathews. This is Societal Narcissism. This video is sponsored by contribution from Hazel, and here's his story. Hello, Ollie. My story begins with being born in Scotland in 1961. There were no scan machines back then, so everyone, including medical professionals, thought my mother was having one child. 20 minutes after my brother was born, I popped out. The first thing the midwife said was, "Oh, we don't like baby to be that color, do we?" Being Celtic, I was very pale. Years later, my mother told me that I was the last thing on earth she wanted to see. Thanks, Mom. Thanks, Mom. Thanks. Man, they really didn't waste much time to let you know what a burden you really were to them, right? Mother and father had both been in the Royal Navy when they met. She normally chose spineless men because, in her words, you can make them do anything you want. My dad was a very handsome man, and she broke her own rule because she fell in lust with him. The fact that you have to use the word lust in the same regard sentence as your own mother. Oh, no wonder we're so messed up. That you have to deal with at a young age, or even at any age, your mother being in lust with any... And it's not surprising. I mean, I'm somebody who looked at his own mother in lingerie on the refrigerator for about a decade. He was not spineless at all. Hence, their marriage was full of rows. Mother was not a maternal person and left work to be a housewife and mother. When my eldest sister was born in 1959, she had struggled with her and stopped breastfeeding. She was also angry that she was a daddy's girl, so she's already in competition with your older sister, 2 years older. My sister hated when I was born. She was okay with my twin brother, though. All I can remember from the very early days was that I grew to dislike her, and she was a bully and violent. She was never punished for this. We were punished for other things, and my mother used to watch. Even if you were innocent, my father would line us up, tell us to lower our underwear, and we would be hit several times with a strap, thick, heavy leather buckled belt, or wooden walking stick. My younger sister was born in 1963, and she was doted on by our mother. My father had been caught having an extramarital affair about 18 months earlier. My mother went on a rampage. I'm fairly confident that my mother had a revenge affair and fell pregnant with my younger sister. What a disaster. What a disaster. The rest of us are all Celtic, coloring and freckles, whereas she was dark-skinned and no freckles. The family features were not the same either. Anyway, she's a raging narcissist, bulimic, and promiscuous, once having slept with 3 brothers. They're all pathological liars and thieve whatever it takes their fancy. Well, she had to learn it from somewhere. If your mother was in lust with your father, something tells me your mother was in lust with every guy, and as someone who fell for the spell of that pasty Irish, Scottish, Celtic skin, trust me here, brother. Trust me. Your mother didn't fall in lust. Your mother was in lust with whoever she was attracted to. That's who your mother was. Don't believe that sob story bullshit. She just happened to fall in lust, and then your sisters are promiscuous, and they're in lust. So where do you think they're getting it from? At this time, I remember I had made up a little song that I used to sing to myself. It went like this: nobody loves me, but I don't care. It was constantly spoken to as if it was something, if I was something on the bottom of her shoe. I had a cycling accident in the park when I was about 5. I was unconscious in an ambulance on my way to a hospital. When I came round for about a minute, my mother was there, having called from home, doing her loving mother act. I remember thinking, oh God, what is she doing here, pretending to be Mother of the Year? I had stitches and a week's stay in the hospital. When my dad picked me up to go home, he told me that he had warned the others not to pick on me. My baby brother was born in 1966, and they just keep firing out children. They just keep firing out kids. He was such a good baby. I would change his nappies, feed him, walk him around the garden in his pram. We went on holiday to a beach area. My dad was building sandcastles with my baby brother, and my mother was supposed to keep an eye on the rest of us. She never did. She was suntan all over, put sunglasses on, and stretch out on a sunbed like she was a Hollywood star. We others were playing in the water, knocking a ball to each other. When they knocked it to me, it went quite a way out. I went slowly on tiptoes to reach it. As I got a finger on it, I got sucked in a riptide. I remember seeing an image of my name slowly disappearing the blackness. I woke up surrounded by people on the beach. My dad was fully clothed, dripping wet. He had rescued me and resuscitated me on the beach. He had to go to my mother because she was totally unaware of what happened. Just like my mother, I was a good kid. I never got into anything, but I've told, my brother broke his collarbone, ate a whole bottle of baby aspirin, doused himself in fucking kerosene. I'm sorry. In freaking kerosene. That was when my father was around. We cracked his lip open. Like, it was to the point where CPS showed up at the house and said if he had one more incident, they were going to take him. They were going to take him, and then my father talked his way out, whatever. And usually the common denominator was my mother not paying attention, my mother on the phone. Your mother on the beach, just worrying about herself. My mother worrying about gossip. Your mother worrying about her suntan on her pasty white Celtic skin. Like, isn't the sun is as far as I know, the sun is your enemy, right? And you think about that. I brought it up years later, and all she said was, "You weren't hurt." Then my father fell ill with rheumatoid arthritis. He was on strong steroids, which cause duodenal ulcers. One day in 1969, they perforated, and he bled to death at age 38. Jeez, that's a hell of a way to go. He had been insured, so my mother got the house, car, a lump sum of money. Less than 3 months later, she was planning for husband number 2. She wrote to a national magazine with an untrue story about how her children wanted to write a seafaring man in the RN, right, in the Royal Navy. Father had not been in the Royal Navy for years, as arthritis diagnosis got him discharged. Yeah, but she wanted those medical badges. She wanted those Navy benefits, man. Like, if Royal Navy is anything like U.S. Navy benefits, they're crazy. The survivor benefits are crazy. I know a girl who's on survivor benefits whose father was Ina E9 Master Chief. He was mastered out in Cali. He was a retired E9 Master Chief, I believe. Definitely Master Chief, but E9, I think it was. Like top level of non-commissioned officers. And her survivor benefits off of her father are nuts. So that's what she's looking for. She's looking for those Navy benefits. But she was in the Royal Navy too, so she should have the benefits as well. But she's looking for somebody active duty. That's what she is. Father had not been in the Royal Navy for years. He had arthritis and had got him discharged. He'd become a retail manager. The magazine photographer had us all lined up on the lawn with my mother. She got a full bag of mail and went through it all. Oh my God, could you imagine putting your children in the magazine for any friggin' pervert or psychopath? And, holy, wow. That left two prospects, both higher ranking than my father had been. She told us to pick one, and we did as we were told. So you're picking a new father like you'd pick a pet. That's healthy. That's going to work out. Shortly afterwards, she ensured that we all wrote nice letters to this person. He became her marriage prospect. Then she decided to move house to be nearer her relatives instead of dad's relatives. So now we lost our father and all our school friends. I told you my elder sister was a bully and violent. Well, I believe she's a narcissist and a borderline. My twin brother is a narcissist and a sociopath. I'm assuming since you came out 20 minutes apart, you guys had to be fraternal twins. Because if you were, maybe not. Are you identical? I'm just one. Not that it matters. My twin brother, I would think fraternal. If he's a narcissist and a sociopath, then if you were identical in this, and then be more likely you guys would be thinking alike. My twin brother is a narcissist and a sociopath. He would torture and beat up my baby brother nearly every night. They shared a bedroom. He also abused the family dog, and he owns his own dogs later. He abused his children and his wife. She was married to someone else when he met her. They began an affair while my twin pretended to be her husband's friend. She then ended her marriage and moved into a rental property and had the first of their two sons. My brother had an affair during his marriage to her, and when arguing about it with his wife, he broke his arm, hitting her on the head. Like, your parents, man. I mean, your parents could raise him. Your parents really could raise him, huh? When I was small, I started to have IBS. Doctors knew nothing about it back then, but I would be crying in agony. The doctor would leave huge bottles of a peppermint liquid. I think it was from my mother's abuse. I then developed a dry cough that I could not get rid of. The family decided I should eat my meals alone on the stairs while they ate in the dining room. I developed the habit of pulling my eyelashes out. It was very obvious for all to see. Jesus. I read a few years ago that this is a very strong indicator of maternal neglect abuse. Yeah, it's called somebody will jump in, tricholatosis, where you pull out your own hair and eyelashes, and it's always from a borderline mother. Always, 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 always. You got somebody who has that disease, I'm going to tell you, like, where's your borderline personality disordered mother? I had to have my tonsils and adenoids removed because of chronic earache. My twin took to bullying me physically and mentally too. Unlike my little brother, I would fight back. I broke 2 pairs of his spectacles in 12 months. Then he would lie about me at school so that people I didn't even know would insult me or threaten me. My mother, under the guise of motherly concern, asked my stepdad to have a talk to me about using drugs. Her next door neighbor was told I used drugs, and she confirmed it because she saw me high on the street, but I didn't see her. I have never used drugs. My mother would also imply that I was mentally ill, and her favorite saying to me was, if you don't bend, you will break. Barnsley Hall was a local mental hospital, and I believe she hoped she could push me there. She would rage that one day she would pack her bags and go, and we could all fend for ourselves, please. Would have been the best thing to happen to everybody. She constantly promoted my elder sister as some sort of genius, despite the fact she failed to get her 11 plus to get into a grammar school, and after studying for only 2 A levels, she only passed 1. She claims she would be famous by the time she was 30. She isn't. She still lives with mommy and is still a virgin. You know, I gotta tell you, man, not on you. It just shows how deeply depraved and sexually inappropriate your entire family is. Like, why do you even know that your sister's a virgin for real? Like, why is that even a topic? But it is. In families like yours and families like mine and like families like so many, where you got these deviant boomer, these deviant boomer sexual sociopaths. And again, I'm not saying it's all boomers, but it's a major part of your generation. And it's a major part of the people who messed up my subscriber base. Like, we say that stuff like it's normal. Like, yeah, that's just how we were raised. It's not normal. It's not right. My baby brother was brutalized every night, emotionally abused, as it turned out, sexually abused from the seafaring man that my mother instructed us all to write. All to write to. Of course, that's what well, what did you think? Well, what did she think's going to happen? You put you're like advertising in a magazine. This pedophile actually had words with my mother about how she was abusing me. She went crazy and warned him off. When I found out he was abusing my brother and my twins, 2 boys, I rang my brother to tell her. Her response was not one of surprise or shock. She simply said, Who have you told? Of course. Can't let that dirty laundry get out, can you? Then she continued to have him as a house guest, and my twin and his wife continued to give him access to their sons. My mother and the older sister tried to bully me into having him stay at my place. I absolutely refused. I believe my mother was using my baby brother as a means of getting the pedophile to marry her. A few years later, he was charged with sexual abuse of 2 other boys and sent to prison. When that happened, he cut all contact for fear of further charges. Like, at that point, this letter should just end. Because if that isn't proof that your mother is just a sick, sociopathic, demonic degenerate, there's her and anybody who have anything to do with her should be far out of your life by now. Mother did nothing to protect my baby brother, even though I told her about my twin brutalizing. Of course not. Because she's another mother out for dick and attention. She's out for dick and attention and a seafaring man with a pension and that lifestyle because that's what she lusts after. She never encouraged friends for him. He never had a girlfriend. He was used in her triangulation and information gathering. We had a bond, being the only two members of the family who had empathy and compassion. They were always trying to cause a rift between us by lying. One day, my mother said she was really worried about my little brother and perhaps I could get a vicar. I was a friend of his to call at the house to talk to him. I replied, "Are you crazy? You know he would go nuts at that. He isn't even religious." She shut up. A few days later, my little brother spoke to me. He said, Mom's been saying you've got religion big time. Is that true?" I assured him that it wasn't true. Hence, Mother's plan was exposed. They were always lying to him to cause a split. Still suffering with IBS, I got engaged at 18, seeing it as a good way to get away. Unemployment was very bad in the UK, and I was trapped in a rural village. I was friends with my fiance's sister. I was shocked at how their dad, in particular, would rant and rave at them, and that was in front of me. Then after we got engaged, he started to mistreat me. He began talking to me like I was an idiot, even though I was a lot more intelligent and educated than him. Then he would start doing it in public, shouting at me for no reason. I broke off the engagement and did not bend to the pressure to get back together again. Good idea. Still looking for a way out, I met another man 2 years older than me. He was in the Royal Navy and came from Gloucester. He was very charming and good-looking. He started sending me travel passes so I could travel to see him. When I turned 21, the Falklands War broke out and my boyfriend's ship was heading down there. All right, so maybe you're a female. Okay, so are you a female? Okay, I'm confused. You must be a female then. So one male, one female. Okay, so that makes sense. So again, so you're a female and your mother's talking to you all about this lust. When I turned 21, the Falklands War broke out and my boyfriend's ship was heading down there. Oh, I got a birthday card with a 10-pound note from my mother, and she refused to phone the naval base to find out whether my boyfriend was going to war. His destroyer was hit, but it did not sink. Eventually, he rented a place in Plymouth, and I moved in with him. I remember the Falklands War. I mean, couldn't even sink their, come on, you guys couldn't even sink their aircraft carrier. And that was an old aircraft carrier we gave them from World War II. Come on, couldn't even sink it. That's all right, we like Argentina now. He was a drinker, but so were most servicemen. The bank chewed up his bank card, and it came out that he owed them a lot of money. So he took to staying on board the ship where he had his meals and laundry done, while I stayed at the rental property eating very cheap food and selling my jewelry, being able to do this. I decided to apply to the Royal Navy and sat the entry test. They told me I was the top scorer in the whole hall and offered me a place in 6 weeks' time. I began training and we underwent a lot of medical testing. They then called me to see the commanding officer and we broke the news that I was pregnant. They said they did not want to see me go and offered me an abortion. Jesus Christ. The Royal Navy offered you an abortion in the 80s? Wow. I refused the offer and therefore was told to leave. I went back to the rented property and my boyfriend and I decided to get married. That would mean we could move into married quarters. We did so and he was away a lot of the time. He was at sea when the baby was due. My mother then suggested she and my stepdad, not the naval man who refused to marry her, came down the day I went to the hospital. I spent weeks making the place spotless, so all my focus could be on the baby. It was clear that my mother was using it as a free holiday. I was 4 weeks overdue, so my bump was very large, and it was a very hot summer. She came to the maternity ward with me, looked up and down the corridor, noticed two women, so decided she had better give me a hug for appearance's sake. It was the most comical, awkward hug I had ever seen. She visited me twice the whole time I was in the hospital. Her gift to me was 4 apples in cling film. Then I told her I was going home tomorrow. She looked at her husband and said, "Is that all right, dear?" I said, "I'm going home tomorrow." When I got home, naval married quarters, my jaw hit the floor. They had completely ransacked the place and even moved my furniture around. The kitchen was particularly disgusting. Also, my elder sister was there. They knew I would not agree to her staying because I had refused before and told her why. So my mother and stepfather had invited her to stay at my home against my wishes. Zero boundaries ever. Zero boundaries ever. The first thing out of my mouth was a calm, quiet, "What have you done to my home?" At which my elder sister shouted, "You should just be bloody grateful she's here at all. Off and get out. All of you. All of you. This is why, Hazel, you should have ended the relationship at the pedophile. That should have been it. That should have been over. It should have been game over right there and then." My mother then turned on the crocodile tears and became the victim. I asked them to leave the next day. I remember my brothers saying to me that they were going to ask mother and stepdad to house sit for them. But when they saw what they had done to my home, they decided against it. She also made herself the victim when at age 16, my brother's friend was killed in a motorbike accident. I knew him. We had been out some evenings together, and it was a great laugh. I went to the funeral and cried. My mother did not. She never had met him. It all became about her, putting on a bigger performance of grief than the lad's own family had expressed. Heartbreaking, to the point that she was confronted, to the point she was comforted and offered a drink and fussed over by stepdad. That's the borderline. The borderline makes everything about them. No event cannot be turned into them, into being about them. When she went to the cinema to watch A Bridge Too Far, you would have thought she had lost someone in that campaign. The crying and the woeful behavior was something to behold. She would make out that she was a struggling widow to everyone. The local fish and chip shop would slip her extra cod for free regularly. What they didn't know was she was buying herself jewelry, designer makeup, designer clothes, and antiques. Meanwhile, she had to wear jumble sale clothes. In fact, I had to buy my own school uniform from the money I made working Saturdays at my friend's shop. She didn't do that to others. My siblings got bath towels to dry themselves after PE at school. I got small hand towels. I had to buy my own first bras too, even my own shoes. Back to my husband. When my husband was home, it wasn't great. He never helped with the baby, and he drank to excess, so much that he would sometimes wet the bed. Ugh. Jeez, Hazel. I mean, just everybody in your life. On one occasion, I physically handed him the baby and told him to look after him as I was going to have a bath. Within 2 minutes of me being in the toilet, having started the bath running, I heard my baby bellowing. I ran into the bathroom and he was in the scalding hot bath water. I removed his hot clothing as I ran downstairs, shouting at my husband to call an ambulance. I put my baby in the kitchen sink full of cold water, which I kept pouring over him. We were taken to the Royal Navy Hospital and the baby was admitted. They had to give him morphine for the pain. I was in bits, but I thought, don't have to go at his dad. Probably feels bad enough already. I mean, kind of like how when your mother almost let you drown. Like, you married a male weird, you kind of married a male version of your mother. The next day I was spending time at the hospital with our son when his dad showed up. He had been given time off work and took a look and asked how long I was going to be. I said I didn't know, to which he replies, well, you better be home in time to make my tea. Jesus. I also discovered he felt no guilt about what happened. He said accidents happen. Thank God my boy was not left with any scars in the end due to new treatment in the military used during the Falklands War. He later left the Royal Navy and returned to Gloucester. We needed to look for a house, and I found a lovely one in a great area, near to a very good primary school. It was within our price range, too. My husband refused to make an offer on it. We ended up paying more money for an ex-council house in a deprived area with a bad school because his priorities were being within walking distance to his mates, within walking distance to his favorite pub, with regular after-hours trading, and within easy distance to his mom and dad's house. The pub was the Wellington Arms and had many Irish customers. They would even cash checks for customers so they could carry on drinking and put mattresses on the floor. The drinking became an issue, especially because we didn't have the money to throw away like that. Then I was expected to cook for my husband and his drunken friends. I was working as a nurse at the Gloucester Royal Hospital, and he still wasn't helping at home. I also told him that as a nurse I had to be available for the shifts. Therefore, he would have to remain 9 to 5. I warned him that if he did anything to damage my work, I would never forgive him. 10 months later, I got home, and he told me he had changed his job to shift work just like that. There were no registered childminders available. I had to resign my nursing job, and I never did forgive him. I think he thought once I qualified, I would leave him, and he was right. What he did not realize was that now I would divorce him as soon as I could. I would hope so. I hope by this point you should realize you just married another version of your mother and father. I was sick of the constant abuse and threats. I used to dread hearing his key in the lock because I knew the abuse would begin as soon as he entered. He used to carry a flick knife, and once when drunk, he had our toddler on his lap, held the knife to his throat while sneering, "What are you going to do about it?" What a tough guy. Oh, just like my threatening children. I don't know what it is with these this thing with threatening their children. Father loved it. My father loved it. He used the knife on me in the kitchen. Drunk again, he stood directly in front of me, pushing the flick knife into my abdomen. I was so done by then that I had just stared him straight in the eyes while he pushed harder. Then he broke off with a maniacal laugh, and left the room. On New Year's Eve, I went to a former colleague's house party, and he went out with all his usual drinking pals. I had a lovely time. When I got home with our child, I found my husband passed out on the sofa, which he had broken. His trousers were down, and he had defecated everywhere. Oh, Lord. What a scene. What a scene. I locked myself and my son in my bedroom after stripping my son's bed because I knew he would use that bed if he couldn't access ours. When I got up, I took my son round to his parents' house, and we spent the day there. He spent the day cleaning, and I told him if he did not go to an alcohol counselor with me, it was over. My mother knew her grandson and I were being abused, but she did nothing to help. He came to the alcohol counselor and filled out the paperwork about his habits. They confirmed he was an alcoholic. Having been charmed by him, the female counselor kept stating, "He seems sincere, give him another chance, etc." I kept thinking, "You don't know him." He didn't know that I was in contact with the counselor over the phone. He soon began to get caught lying to her. Once she had swallowed the bitter pill of having been made a fool of by him, she told me that for my sake and my child's sake, I should divorce him. When I did serve him with the divorce papers, he attacked me. I pushed our toddler behind me while he was begging me to just make one move so he would put me in intensive care. He hit me on the side of the head and shoved me and our child out on the street at night. I called the police. Why would he shove his own kid out? Like, I get it, he's throwing you out trying to say, but he's throwing the kid out too. I mean, that just shows you who he is and what his priorities are. I called the police who stated that they were going to take me to the domestic violence shelter, but having seen me and spoken to me, they didn't think it was a good idea. Sergeant Peter Hood took us to the police station where they got some fish and chips for us as we had not eaten. He then suggested that he ring my mother and stepfather. I told him they would not help. My mother even said, "Call Samaritans, call anyone but me, I don't want to hear it." Then she got my sister-in-law on the phone. Then she got my sister-in-law to phone me and tell me not to call my mother anymore. Sergeant Hood said leave it to him. My stepdad turned up several hours later, and he took us to my mother's. The first thing she said was, "Your stepdad said you don't look like you've been hit." You should have left at the pedophile. You should have left at the pedophile. I replied angrily, "Oh well, I guess I wasn't then." The following morning, I went to put my metal frame spectacles on, and they fell apart. He obviously damaged them when he hit me. I showed my mother, no comment. After 2 days, she decided I should go back. This, of course, was the dangerous thing to do. In the car on the way back, the radio was on a program which was all about the chances of women being murdered by their spouses when undergoing divorce. I thought, this is like a dark comedy, but there is nothing I can do about it. I walked into that house believing I might be murdered that night. To my amazement, my husband decided to play nice so that I would believe that this time he was being true to his word. Hence, I could trust him now. When he was caught out at the alcohol counselors, we made an agreement that if he failed to do it properly, he would vacate the house. By thinking he could trick me into dropping the divorce, he agreed to leave the house. He gave me his key and left. It was like a huge black cloud had been lifted as I watched him walk away. He did take the TV, video recorder, and record tape deck and an iron with ironing board. He also messed with paying the bill, etc. I was keeping my married surname. He would go to the gas company, electric company, water company, and tell them that my name was reverting to my maiden name. That meant the bills were made out incorrectly. He got to sit in Cromwell Street, right by Fred and Rose West. He would often play games with maintenance, so I would have to walk there to see him to straighten it out. He wanted free access to our son as he was an alcoholic, and I would only agree to him having supervised visits. He told his solicitor that he didn't have a drinking problem. I was accused of refusing him access by my own solicitor. We set up a day and time. Our son was kept up late for the visit, and he never showed up. Meanwhile, I contacted the alcohol counselor and explained I was only okay with supervised access. She agrees and wrote formally to my solicitor about his alcoholism, advising supervised access only. My solicitor then stopped referring to it as an alleged drinking problem and made sure it was taken into account. When he finally realized I was going through with the divorce, he called round one day. He said to see our son. He paid very little attention to him and asked to use the toilet. He seemed to be taking a long time, and I didn't hear him actually use the toilet. He went down the hall. He seemed a little uneasy and said he was going now. After he went, I noticed the kitchen cupboard was open. I thought, he knows the toilet paper isn't kept there. I looked in the toilet and there was toilet paper. I couldn't explain it at the time, but it was strange. More later. Once we were divorced, I decided that my future in Gloucester would be a bad one and my son's schooling would remain poor. My mother wanted me to stay there because she wanted a bad life for me. I tried looking for a life in employment as a nanny. I tried looking for live-in employment as a nanny. I interviewed for 2, but they really weren't suitable, not as suitable accommodation-wise. So I took the bull by the horns and put my house on the market. Then the housing market crashed. So I took it off the market and sold it privately to a developer. That meant I was basically walking away with change. I knew my mother would be tempted by the idea of my son living under her roof for a limited spell. Just think of the excitement of turning my own son against me, or even better in her crazy head, getting him away from me. I furnished one of her bedrooms for myself and my son. I paid her more than what landlords were charging for rent. Plus I was buying all my own food, toiletries, laundry, liquid, etc. I asked her why I was having to pay so much when my baby brother paid so little. She blurted out, "That's different, he's family." Everything was okay until 3 months in, my borderline sister returned. She started causing trouble straight away, accusing me of things I hadn't done, being violent with my child. One day she turned to me and said, "I know you're my sister and everything, but I couldn't care less if you died in the gutter. It's nothing to do with me." When they tell you who you are and what they think of you, believe them. I just thought I've known that since I was born. On one occasion, the phone rang and she picked it up. I was stood right there, and it was a friend of mine asking me. I was indicating, "Give me the phone," with my hand. She looked at me and said, "Sorry, she's not in right now. I'll tell her you rang," and hung up. I kept approaching the council about accommodation, and NGP was backing me just because my family was making my life hell. I toyed with the idea of going to Scotland where friends were. For that, I had to write to my child's father for permission. Normally, it would have been rude, abusive, and refused. I got a reply that was polite, friendly, and wishing me the best. I commented to a friend, "I don't know what he's up to, but it's the polar opposite what he's normally like." I was given a council flat after 12 hellish months at my mother's. She did spread rumors that I was a bad mother. She did teach my son to say that he wanted to live with his nanny. She did act like she was going to get him from me. Foolish woman. When I was in my own place, I furnished it and made curtains and settled in. Then my eldest sister tells me that stepdad, sister, and mother have to put some furniture out in their front garden, which I could purchase from them. I said I didn't need any more furniture. She said, "I know, but don't be rude when you refuse it." I replied, "I'm never rude," so I went over feeling that this was some kind of stitch-up. Probably. They were waiting for me. I explained that I had all the furniture I needed, all in white, so if I did want more, their furniture wouldn't match anyway. They looked very surprised. I said thanks anyway and left. They never spoke to me again. Clearly, my mother had told them that I did need furniture to make it look like a snub, so when I had to refuse to buy from them. You have a right to not like what you have to like. It doesn't matter what, even if she did tell them that, which she probably did. Nobody has any respect for you whatsoever. They only wanted you because they wanted your money. I had unboxed all my items, vacuum cleaner, toaster, iron, etc. When I used the iron for the first time, there was a smell of burning and a flash. I switched it off and took the back off the plug. The earth wire had been completely unscrewed. Then it fell into place. That odd occasion my ex-husband had come around. The kitchen door that was open was where I kept the iron. Wow. I should add that my ex-husband's trade was an electrician. Then I moved and the iron went into storage. It hadn't electrocuted me yet. Hence the ever so friendly, nice letter about moving to Scotland. What this genius hadn't realized was that the EU directive stating that all iron should have a safety cutout no matter how cheap the iron. Prior to that, large numbers of women were being electrocuted by their irons. Wow. Were they? I guess that's how these guys were. I guess that's how these guys were killing their wives. So he attempted to kill me when he realized that it must have failed due to the amount of time passed. Contact with him went back to nasty, offensive, abusive. Now I had my own roof over my head. I was available to say no to my mother more often. This did not go down well. She continued spreading lies about me, as now her vision of the future was me isolated in my flat. I started to date. My mother's suggested male was worse than my ex-husband. I went on a number of one-time only dates because there was no chemistry, or I did not believe he would be good with my son, or they seemed quite spineless mama's boys. My mother piped up, "That's good, you can mold them." I relied, if he's spineless, I can't respect him, and if I can't respect him, I can't love him. She shut up. Then I met my future husband. He ticked the boxes for me, and I guess I ticked the boxes for him. He had no baggage, was divorced because his wife had an affair and had no children. He had his own place and a strong work ethic, non-smoker and a very occasional drinker. When I told my mother that we were getting married, stepdad in the room also, she scowled at me and said, "And does he know?" To this day, I have no idea what she meant by that. I was going to move into his place, and then 2 weeks later, we would marry. When the time came for my move, I popped into my village GP practice as a courtesy to let them know my move meant moving doctor. The general practitioner looked at my records and said they would update my tetanus injections. He did that and then asked if I was going abroad at all. I said no. He said, "I'll give you a polio vaccine anyway." He gave me a live oral polio vaccine. I was confused as to why, but didn't give it more thought. I moved, got a new GP, got married 2 weeks after the polio vaccine. I became very ill. I was dropping 2 pounds in weight daily. I was in a lot of pain in my bones and muscles. I became itchy all over. I couldn't sleep. I developed allergies. I saw my GP and thought, if it has to do with the vaccinations, they will tell me. Even though my weight was falling, I had tachycardia. All things that could prove by putting me on a set of scales or taking my pulse. Every doctor treated me like a hypochondriac. One even said, "Go buy yourself a new hat or something." I tried one last time. This doctor said I was depressed. I tried to express what was going on, then gave up. I called my husband in tears about it, saying, "They're just going to let me die." He rang the doctors and had a long talk with them. They arranged another appointment. This time they actually started sending me to different consults who found that I was suffering from all the symptoms I had reported, and various tests proved so. I started being prescribed various meds for different problems. Then after 3 months, the GP said he thought I was suffering from ME/CFS. I accepted this, and as it seemed the best fit at the time. The diagnosis meant I was abused by medical professionals for the next 30 years. You see, we moved from there, changing doctors again. about 12 months later. When we went from the Midlands to Wiltshire, I took the opportunity to go no contact with my family except my baby brother. My mother got my address, however, from a friend who she contacted with fake tears about her beloved grandson. She clearly thought we couldn't have gone far. We were, in fact, 5 hours away, so she never did turn up at my door. Neither did she ever send her beloved grandson anything for birthdays or Christmas. She told him when he turned 18, no gift card. She told him, she wrote him when he turned 18, no gift or card. She wrote as if we were stopping his contact and that if he got in touch, there would be a great gift and various other predictable rubbish. My son showed us the letter and then ditched it. Husband and I asked the doctor if, in light of my illness, we could try for a baby. They said no problem. I fell pregnant straight away. Then 8 weeks later, I miscarried. Then after that, I go to the hospital as an emergency, still bleeding. We decided not to try to have a baby until my health improved. If you have ME/CFS, you can become well after 2 years, 5 years, or 10 years. Time went by and I never improved. So the son I had, from whom the Royal Navy offered me an abortion, turned out to be the only child I had. I started to doubt that my diagnosis was correct because I had problems that were major problems for me that were never mentioned in the literature. About 8 years ago, we paid privately to see a professor of immunology who specialized in mast cell activation syndrome. This is what I believed I had. I spent 6 months doing all the tests and medical history. He did diagnose me with MCAS. If I had tried to have more babies, I would have lost them all because the mast cell treat the fetus as a foreign object. The cause of my illness was the live oral polio vaccine. There is no cure. I was confident that I would be at my mother's house until the day she died. And you know what? It does seem like these medical professionals go out of their way to protect side effects of the V's. Just saying. I was confident my baby brother would be at my mother's house until the day she died. The way she had her claws deep into him, I was positive. What I failed to realize was that when my older sister returned, it changed the dynamic. Before I even left for Wiltshire, she and my mother were gaslighting him that they had gone no contact with him too. I reassured him that was a lie, that I would never do that. He wrote to me a year after my move to let me know my gran had died. They had told him not to tell me, but he thought I should know. I decided he did not because my mother would tell me to leave. Instead, I had a wreath delivered to the funeral. Then he went quiet. I would write, but I believe my mother and sister destroyed those letters. They always opened others' mail. My brother did not have a mobile phone, and a landline was in my mother's room. So phoning was out of the question. Showing up at the door would not have worked either. They simply would have blocked entry. These days it's called coercive control, and it's classified as domestic abuse. Today I could use a new law in the UK to get access to my brother. I discovered he was thrown out of the house in 2002. As my mother and her BFF daughter permanently at home, her choice about who was going to care for her in her old age changed. My brother was now superfluous to requirements. I spent years trying to find him, even wrote my narcissistic nephew to ask on a 1 week only email address. He never replied, but he knew. I then joined Ancestry.com and searched. My baby brother had spent 19 years working at a golf club in the Midlands. He always did love nature. For all of those 19 years, he thought he was totally alone in the world. He thought I had dropped him too. I had not. I even had a king-size bedroom in my home for him in my home, as I thought as he hadn't contacted me, he was still under my mother's control. He was in the newspapers in November 2021 as a missing person. His employers described him as vulnerable. 4 weeks after he returned to the golf club, which was with a job accommodation, I think he was shocked and embarrassed to see himself in the press. He was nice, kind, quiet person. 2 days before Christmas 2001, he killed himself. He had no friends and nobody knew anything about his family that he was no contact with. The state found his mother so that she can claim his body and bury him. She did claim the body, but there was no record of a funeral, obituaries, no notice, no press, nothing. I believe she had a cheap, non-attended cremation and told them to dispose of his ashes. No plaque, no name in the register. She obliterated him, and I should believe she did it to me. They all knew that he was the only family member that I loved and cared for. They knew I had not abandoned him and never would have. I had been no contact for 30 years, and she certainly has broken my heart with what she has done to him. She's now 91 years old. My elder sister lives with her. Stepdad is dead. My twin lives in the same road. My younger sister lives about 8 miles from her. She still pulls the strings and they dance. The only good thing is that her line will die out. Elder sister will never have children. Baby brother never had children. Twin brother had a gay son who doesn't want children, and the other son doesn't want children. My son doesn't want children. My younger sister didn't want children but was pressured by her husband and mother-in-law. So she ended up having 2 daughters. I don't think they will be very maternal having such a narcissistic, bulimic, vanity-driven mother. Oh, my twin's wife died about 20 years ago and my ex-husband is dead. There doesn't seem to be a great deal of longevity with toxic families. I remain no contact and my husband and I are arranging a memorial for my baby brother. All the best, Ollie. Love, Hazel in the UK. That is extremely sad. And so much of it could have been avoided if you had left it to pedophile. I mean, I don't know what you could have done about your brother, your baby brother, but not a lot. These type of structures are so destructive, and they're nearly impossible to escape. And you did. And the rest of them are just, your mother's like a very, very, very early stage boomers. Your other siblings seem to be like late stage boomers. A lot of perversion, a lot of sexual deviancy going on. And I would ask about the I word, because not only is she bringing in guys to do this, it's really sad. And this is a lesson more for the people watching who maybe haven't gotten to this point in their life. When your narcissist tells you who they are and they show you who they are, believe them. If you would cut it at the pedophile, none of this ever would have happened. A lot of this could have been avoided. A lot of it. So, I hope that helps. Thank you so much for the contribution. I'm sorry for the confusion. Thought you probably understand why I thought, because the donation came in under your husband's name, I guess, and so It is a female. Thank you so much, Hazel, for your contribution and your story. I really appreciate it. Thank you to everybody watching. Please leave any opinions or advice in the comment section below. And again, if you want your story read on the channel, you have a topic you'd like me to cover, something you'd like to expose, you'd like to set up a Skype, a phone call, have a private video made, you'd like to sponsor a video like this for someone who needs help and can't afford it, or just make a contribution to the channel and generally keep it supported, growing, and successful, because this channel survives 100% on contributions from all of you. Without you guys, all this goes away. So if you like what you see here and you want to see more videos like this, you know what to do with either the Cash App, Zelle, PayPal, and email link in the description box below. Also, please like and share this video wherever you can. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't, and be sure to click the subscription bell to be notified of all my video uploads. Also, be sure to subscribe to both my channels on Rumble. Follow me on X and Telegram as well. I'm Ollie Matthews. This has been Societal Narcissism. Take care, everyone.